Hey, Immanuel family. The next few moments are going to be a very important and powerful time. I want to invite you into our home to listen to a conversation that I had with a few folks from Immanuel Church that many of you may know. I asked Dana Herman, our own pastor Jung Mo Koo, and Will and Sharana McFadden to join me for a conversation about racism and what to do about it. Now, why are we doing this? Some of you are probably thinking, I've heard enough about this topic already this week, but I'm asking you to not disengage and go to another church service. And here's why. As I watched the video of the police officer holding his knee against George Floyd's neck while he cried out for his mom, I also watched the other police officers stand there and do nothing. Their silence made them complicit. And you know what I think? Our silence makes us complicit as well on this topic. What happened to George Floyd was completely wrong, and we all must stand up and say so. His death, as well as the recent deaths of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, has exposed the deep racial tensions our country needs to face and deal with. I'm also deeply disturbed by the violent response to Floyd's murder. Many people are using his death as a pretense to justify cop killing, looting, destruction of property, and other acts of violence. This too is completely wrong, and we must stand up and say so. I don't pretend to have all the answers to this complex problem of racism. And today isn't the first word, and it certainly isn't going to be the last word, and we probably won't say everything perfectly. But we do need to wrestle with this issue as a local church. I also think that there's a lot of hope in this moment because sometimes things need to get really bad to expose the bad before we can begin to heal and forge a new pathway forward. The complete unedited conversation of what we're about to experience will be available on YouTube and Facebook this week, as well as another conversation that I had earlier in the week with Reverend Wes Tink from Front Step Ministries in Philadelphia, and Reverend Joseph and Chantel St. Fard from Word in Action Ministries in Philadelphia as well. I think that you'll really find that conversation very meaningful as well. Thanks for joining in today. God bless.
First of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. And I really appreciate your openness to just say, yeah, I'm willing to have, a dialogue. And I want you to just have a dialogue to be real. I want you to say what's on your heart. You don't have to frame your words. You don't have to hold back your words. You can just say whatever comes to mind. What went through your mind when you saw George Floyd on the ground, handcuffed, with an officer of the law having his knee on his neck? What were you thinking or feeling at that moment?
Well, I'll start the dialogue. When I seen it, it was more, I had a whole bunch of feelings and emotions running through me, especially being as a black man, knowing that that's a possibility for me. It's not even like something that's far-fetched. That's it can be in a moment. Sorry that I'm getting shooken up now just thinking about it, but I felt angry, I felt disgusted, then I felt for George's family to actually put myself in their shoes to see my father or my brother on TV being murdered. Like, that took me to a whole nother different level of emotions and feelings. But I went through the gamut. I went through the full gamut of it.
Yeah.
I felt hurt as well. I was nervous. you know how you want something to stop right while you're looking at it, and you know that it's a recording, but in your heart you're like, stop, you know. And I felt helpless. Like I wish I was there to be a part of it, to say the word stop. And on the other hand, I felt scared because they said it was because of a $20 counterfeit bill. And the 3 or 4 days before that happened, I had a counterfeit bill in my possession, and I did not know where I got it from. And I went to the supermarket and I pulled it out of my pocketbook where I had my money from my bank. And the lady stopped me and she's like, "No, this is a counterfeit bill." And I'm scared. At that point of time, I was nervous. I was scared, and I was like, "Well, I don't know how I got it. I don't know. How do you know it's a counterfeit bill?" And so I was upset that whole day. But I was thinking that could have been me. That could have been my husband that had the counterfeit bill besides myself, and maybe she didn't see me as a threat, but she could have seen my husband as a threat. And I could have been reliving that same thing. And for it to hit so close to home, it was like, man, that was really, really close. That it could have been one of us because we were in the same situation.
I know, similar to you, when I heard it was like a $20 counterfeit bill, I was like so shocked, and I was like, you know, I don't think there's anything worth like losing your life over, but I was like, this is like horrible that it's something just so small and trivial that my mom was like, yeah, like that could have been like anyone, it could have been her with like, you know, you can just pick it up. And I guess I've just been thinking a lot about like life and like death and like what it all means, and it's like it's so precious in the fact that we just like, you know, someone just thinks, oh, like, you know, I can just like because of something in me, like I have just the power to take away like all that you bring to this world. Just made me like so sad.
Personally, I didn't watch intentionally. However, I read lots of in social media an article about how, you know, people are dividing, and that made me really, really sad. This is my 11th year to settle in America. In the beginning of my settling in America, it is hard to love America because I love my country back to South Korea. But, you know, since I work in Immanuel, God poured me heart for America. Right now, whenever I have phone call with my mother or my parents, sometimes unconsciously, this is my country. United States is my country. And it's just sometimes I'm so amazed how much I love America. This is my country. This is where I work. This is people whom I love so much. And when I see the big division, and then that cannot be my country. And there's something that I didn't see well. I may knew before, but I ignored to see it, what it really is. But I was big pain in my heart. That cannot be my country. God, what is it? What do I have to do? I was so useless. I feel I'm so useless. You know, and I came here in U.S. for multicultural ministry, different culture back to one in Jesus Christ. When it happened, when people are divided, they are arguing each other. I kind of, there is a, internal voice. See, Jong, you cannot do it. This is, you cannot break the word. This is something in America suffering 100 years, and then that's what you're gonna do to break it. This, and then you cannot do it. And I feel so exhausted and overwhelmed, and I feel like this is it. I think I was shooting in front of the world, and that is not going to break it. That's how I felt.
What do you feel and think when you see the protests and the riots and the looting that's taking place all across America? Somebody said today, I received an email from a friend of mine that said that they had family that was down protesting, peaceful protest down the city today, and there was tear gas used. And inexplicably, they were like, what's going on here? What's running through your mind when you see what's taking place all across America?
I think for me at least, like I've had a lot of these exact same conversations with like other students and like college classmates, and it's really tense because we're all in different cities, big cities, and some of my friends are at these protests and others are like, you know, there should be this separation between like protesting and looting because like we're sending two different messages. But I also feel like, I guess at this point, you know, people just, there's a rage that I feel like I can't really like describe, but I feel like it's deep because it's like, I think a lot of people are just so angry, and I think it's hard to separate those, and I feel for like what people are going through because people are like, this could be me, this could be my brother, this could be my son. I don't think it makes it right to be violent. I read a story about a mom who it was her only business, and she was a black woman and got looted, and she was like, this was my source of income. And so I feel like it's really hard because there's so many emotions, but I guess I want the message to be a message of just like what ultimately is conveyed, and like the protest to ultimately be a message of like, you know, this is an injustice, but how do we do it in a way that like is the most the most effective and like the strongest without, you know, hurting other innocent people is what's really tough.
Well, my girls and I just had this conversation about the protesting versus the riots and the looting. And they're actually getting ready. They're going down with my sister and my mom. They're having something in Souderton this afternoon, right about now. And so I was kind of like on the fence. We've been watching things about sticking up for their rights, loving who they are, encouraging them to be a part of something bigger than yourself, standing up for what's right. So they're like, we want to go and protest, and I'm like, in my heart, I want them to, but then another way, I'm like, I'm kind of nervous because I don't know what to expect, you know, for them if they go. And so we've decided to let them go and protest because it's a peaceful protest, and we have other adults that's going with them. But we talked about the thin line between rioting and protesting, and I told them that hurt people, and that's what it's really about. You have individuals that don't have much or don't have guidance, and they're exploding. And so when you have people exploding without guidance, hurt people. And that's the difference between knowing. And before they wanted to go protest, I said, well, you're going to have to go. You have to read some books. You're going to have to write me a paragraph on, you know, why you want to do it. You're going to have to look at some segregation, desegregation documentaries, because I don't want you to go out there and you don't know anything about a cause that you're going out to be for, you know. And so that would change your perception on how you're going to do things and how you're going to, you know, show up and not just show out. So
yeah, and that's where I see the difference with the peaceful protests and the rioting, is the education part of it, knowing the cause, knowing what you're protesting about, knowing what you're fighting for. As a young person that's seeing this and seeing peaceful versus riot, they can get attracted to the excitement of it just alone and completely have the cause out of mind and go down there and start off peaceful, but then it's so easily influenced because they don't have, well, I won't say that they don't have, but that, to me, that will be a lack of knowledge of the cause and getting with the right people and being a part of it. But yeah, just to see it reach and go all the way over to like the UK was wow.
Yeah. That was amazing.
Yeah, that
was hard.
That really touched my heart. That really touched my heart to see it spread And that gave me hope, more hope and faith that, okay, the atmosphere is right. The move is beginning. So, and having this open dialogue about it is awesome. And I believe this is going to catch fire all across the globe, and there's going to be more conversation. And that's really the first step and the most important step, is to be able to open your mouth and speak to it. So,
Thanks. What is racism? We throw terms around a lot, and sometimes we're not exactly sure that we're saying the same things. And I'm going to ask you, after what's a good working definition of racism, what is social injustice? We talk a lot about social justice issues. What is social injustice? So take a shot.
I mean, today I've been having a lot of these conversations, and I'm having one with someone who said that in a class at my college they defined it as prejudice plus power. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because I think there's like a lot of complicated words in there that I'm like, I don't know. I feel like there's so many nuances to all of it, but I don't know. I think it goes back to this idea of, like, we talk about, oh, we want to be colorblind, which isn't necessarily like the way to go, right? Because we all have differences, and I think we should acknowledge that and accept like the beauty of the way God created us. But I feel like it goes down to, like, when you see someone who looks different than you, and rather than kind of assuming the best, you kind of think there's something inherently negative with that person just because of like something that's like a box, right? That, something that's on the outside, rather than seeing, oh, well, they're different, like, let me see how I can embrace them. And I feel like, for me at least, that definition, I think, just helps me kind of just cope and reason what I think is racism. I don't know, it's a tough definition.
I would say it's like a pot of gumbo. It's a little bit of everything in it. It's a little bit of our history as America. It's a little bit of our current status, personal experiences, and we hear the term loosely used like racism, but we more identify with racism with personal experiences, and kind of like highlighting that and attaching that to racism. The definition, I probably looked it up before, but I can't really recall looking up the definition of racism and saying, oh, so that's what I'm going through. You know what I mean? Because it's, for me, this is what it always was. This is how life is. And you just have to know how to navigate around it and not put yourself in a position where it can end you up dead or in jail. And it was just a upbringing, a way that, and we've even passed it down to our children. When you get in the car, this is what you need to have on you. Never leave home without your identification, like stuff like that. We had specific rules that we needed to abide by. If you're going downtown and on a train with your friends, this is how you should behave. This is what you wear. Don't put your hands in your pocket. Keep your hands out. Don't wear, like, especially with the Trayvon thing, with the hoodies, we were just like, no, take that hood off. Pull your pants up. Wear your belt, because you don't even know where that came from. And that's a prison mentality with the saggy pants. And it's like, it's just a big whole pot of, I see it as a pot of gumbo of a whole lot of things that's attached to it, where there is no real specifics on it, but it's just something, for me, is just a lifestyle that you learn how to best protect yourself while navigating through life.
So could you give examples of, have you been personally, do you feel like you've been discriminated against? And what does that look like? an example or a thought?
I don't want to keep being a mouth.
I was waiting for Young Mo because he's like quiet.
Again, like I have been in America in just 11 years. Personally, I don't think I've been racism. However, one of the guilty that I have heard since I serve Immanuel, I heard many Asian American talks about racism they experience in secular area. For example, one lady we all know, she lost job because she was working in dentist. She was a reception, but the food that Asian take it, smell people, and the owner doesn't like it, and then the owner fired her, and then as Mark, you mentioned, and then since coronavirus happened, I think I have more than 5 Asian American member of our church mentioned when they grocery shopping, you Chinese, even though they were not Chinese, you Chinese, you cause us a suffering, all of us, and then all of the everyone just look at her, and that was. She couldn't shop anymore. She just ran away, and then but I felt a little guilty because I kept silent about it. But I think this is a great opportunity. We cannot stay calm anymore. We have to talk about it. We have to issue about it. How many people are suffering from racism, and then. I didn't mourn together well. Just I listened them, but I didn't responded well. I think this is time to change my attitude, how I can respond people who has been racism well.
I've experienced a lot of different racist acts that have happened towards me. Some being at work, because I don't talk a certain way, or I've been told I'm not like them. You're not like the blacks we see on TV. You're a different kind of black. You don't talk like they do, or you don't act like. And so it's a perspective on what they think because somebody's watching MTV or watching certain things, and they don't know that's being racist, because you're setting me aside from my people and saying that there's something wrong with them and nothing wrong with me that you can see to the eye. It's a lot of different things at my home. My neighbor does things to us, and she calls the cops on us probably every other week.
Your neighbor?
My neighbor
calls the police on you.
She thinks that we're drug dealers. She says, it's so much that she does that not too long ago she called the cops and told them we had a gun. And the cops came to my house and she told them that we were shooting a gun. And this is the first time I talked to her daughter. I said, listen, we're living in a time that this is dangerous. You cannot call the cops on us for every little thing, and you cannot say that my husband has a gun, like that he's outside shooting, because it's dangerous. So I've experienced it in so many different ways. The worst that I've ever experienced it was probably about 4 years ago. My sister and I were going to the supermarket and ShopRite, and it was about 7:00 in the morning, and we actually were going to set up for the food pantry in Philadelphia. We were going down there, and a woman came to us. There was no one in the parking lot, and my sister parked in the child area where you can park with a shop. But it was 7:00 in the morning.
Right here in Lansdowne.
In Lansdowne, and she came in our faces. She yelled in our faces and said, "Can't you read, you black niggers?" you should not park here. In my face, I turned, I cried. My sister got so angry, and her and I were back and forth, and the lady spit in my sister's face. It was the worst part. I've never experienced it so blunt before. Because there's subtle things, but when you see someone actually screaming in your face and saying certain things to you, and when she called us, out of our name, it was almost surreal. Like, I just couldn't believe that someone actually came in my face and just actually, said those things. And that was the first I've ever had someone actually right out just come up in my face and say those things.
You mentioned subtle. What are subtle ways that you've experienced racism? It doesn't have to be overt. That's a very overt description that you just gave about the parking lot. But what are subtle things that you've experienced?
Someone saying, "How did you get your hair like that?" But it's the way, not intrigued about, not intrigued about, oh, that's beautiful. But in a way, it's just a certain way that someone would say anything that would make you feel like, well, what's wrong with my hair? Or you'd be uncomfortable about, certain things. It's so subtle sometimes you don't even.
Yeah, it's an experience when my wife, she know I like to exercise. And I'm not like a big heavy weight person, like lifting weights. But I like to do stuff like boxing and push-ups. And she thought it would be a great idea to get me like a free 2-week class to this place right on 309 where they do kickboxing. And I was like, oh, that'll be perfect. That'll keep me tight. So we drove there. I think we were at Burlington Coat Factory. We were coming from there, and we stopped past. And I went, and he had a full class, and it was probably about 2 black people in the class. So I'm like, okay, I see some brownies in there. So I went in, and there's another group in the back, like on a match, just conversating, probably just taking a break while the class is going on. So I'm at the front, I'm looking at all the pamphlets, I'm grabbing information, and I'm kind of like checking it out. I turn around, I see the people and have a conversation. I'm watching the class a little bit, and I'm kind of checking the gym out. And I'm like, all right, I didn't see like a little bell or anything, but I'm obviously walking back and forth on purpose to be noticed, to be assisted.
Sure.
And I was just like, and then I looked out the window to my wife. I'm like, and I was just like,
someone else came in, another.
Yeah, it was these 2 guys, and they were Caucasian. They came in. The dude walked straight to the front to them. I see him patting them on. I'm in the car. We're getting ready to pull off. She starts the car. He comes straight to them, pats them on the back, and say, hey, like he's having a conversation. And they did the same thing, grabbed the pamphlets, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I looked at my wife. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And he literally then, when I thought about it, he was the one who came out from the back, seen me up front, and went back to the conversation that they were having in the back. And I'm like,
right.
And it wasn't like I came in there with a pair of shorts or anything. I was coming from work. I had my slacks on, my shoes, a nice shirt. I was nice, neat, clean cut. And I'm like, what, you thought I was an inspector or an auditor? I don't get it, but that's like a subtle thing that happens, and that happens pretty frequently. To be
Really?
honest, yeah, it does.
What is social injustice? We talk a lot about social justice issues. Okay, but what does that mean? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Do you have an example?
Well, social injustice for me is when you're getting, when one group of people are entitled to certain things that another group of people aren't entitled to. In school, when I grew up, there were 35 kids in my 3rd grade class. And I thought that was the norm until we moved in this area. As I grew up and I moved my children in this area, and it's no more than 15 kids or 12 kids in a class, and it's always been that way. Not having the books that you need in certain areas and school books that you need in certain areas, not having food, proper lunch, healthy, proper lunches, besides something that's in a milk crate or a carton, using your, being able to have your voice heard in a certain way, and for another group to be able to have their voice heard in a certain way and things get done. To me, it's like, well, it's social injustice. I can't get my voice heard. My voice cannot go over the hill. And, we need, and that's just the way somehow we live life. But that's why we need other individuals to help us with social injustice,
I like that.
Yeah, I was going to say that was a good example.
really-
Because I thought it was the norm too, growing up, going through the education system. And like even when we moved out here and went back to our old neighborhood, it was like, out here you can breathe. You have space to move around. Went back to my old neighborhood and it was just like, I don't believe I used to live like this, but I didn't know that was a problem. That was a way of life. That was the norm for me. And I felt a little anxious. I'm not going to lie. I felt a little anxious in my old neighborhood. But that has long passed and gone away. But just when you get to a certain level in life and you begin to experience some different things and go back to something that you probably left for a while, and just to see it, and it's just like,
This is wrong.
this is crazy. And whenever I do go back, I try to have conversations with people that I grew up with and some of the younger people, and their mentality is not there. It's not there for that expansion, and you want so bad for them to see it. And it's just like, if I have to take each of you individually and expose you to something a different way to get something going in you, some will get it and take it and run with it, and some is just like, it's busting their comfort zone and they don't even want to deal with. They think it's a lot to it.
But some people are scared.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people are scared because they know, people that know that there's social injustice, they don't want to talk about it because it goes on both ends for black, white, everyone sometimes in their comfort zone, and no one wants to come out of the comfort zone to say, I may want more, but how do I obtain more and not make it this uncomfortable for myself? Because I don't want to go through everyday racist behavior on talking to people or dealing with this. I'll just stay right here because I'm comfortable and I know my neighbor and I are going through the same thing, and I don't want to push in certain directions where it's going to make me uncomfortable. So it goes both ways.
Let's switch a little bit and talk about what are some solutions to racism. What's just solutions? What can we do? What does that look like?
I have thought about it a lot, and in the beginning I had no idea, but these days I'm thinking of the power of the relationship. When I came to America, in my cell phone, out of my number of the cell phone that I saved, 95% are Korean. Even though I was living in America, because I serve a Korean immigrant church, so 95% of that I save as my people, the phone number are Korean. So I just hang out with almost a Korean at the time. So they told me about, because I was a new immigrant, and they told me about stereotype what is white looks like. what is African American looks like and what they do, and then stay with them, and then this is what you have to do, and then they give me the box of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow God, graciously move our family to Immanuel, which is a multicultural family. And right now, and 70% of my, my cell phone, all of the name and they are, all of the diversity, like white and then African American and Hispanic, and I realized all of what I heard as a stereotype who they are is all wrong. Once I know personally who you are, who Mark is, I just realized they are all different. And the relationship made me love toward them, and the relationship caused me to think that not looking their skin, I am able to see their heart, where God is dwelling. And then, for example, when I serve Asian American ministry, one of our church members we all know, I think 2015, came to me. Jungmo, I joined the Vietnam War. Since then, I hate Asian. I hate Asian. And then whenever he saw Asian, he was thinking, like all of the racism thought. But once he know me, once he know Asian American who are friend of God, he realized this is wrong. They are my friend. They are good in God. And that was value of what multicultural ministry is. That's why Asian American ministry is not in like a putting aside of the Immanuel. We're gonna gather only Asian American. We're gonna do whatever we want. No, we're gonna be with all of you so that we can make a bridge between two culture and three culture, and so that we know we can connect each other to have a relationship. That's why I don't want you to guys put in the box in the black. I don't want you put the box in white. I want them to. This is my friend. This is my family, so that. I was thinking when the police officer did that, what if he has a good friend of the African American in his mind? I think he think differently. Thankfully, I have so many good friends, white and black, and I don't think I'm in a very good safe place to think about what is culture, how beautiful culture are, how diverse. It is, as you said, God created diverse. This is a beautiful thing. And then finally I realized the relationship is matter. Relationship bring me love toward all of them, whatever they color skin have. I think that's why multicultural ministry is so important. Because help us to see the heart of God, not box of us.
Yeah, I really like that. Kind of thinking about what you said, I work with kids in like a Christian ministry, and what I love is just the way that they, it's like multicultural. There's just a bunch of different kids, and when I kind of watch their parents and the way they interact, like there's definitely some tension. This is also down south, and it's a little there's also more there too, but the kids, they're like, it doesn't matter what their parents, how their parents are acting, they're just all talking, and I just like love to see them interact, help each other with homework, and it's like they're really just kind of bridging relationships and not held back by any sorts of any of like what adults are kind of thinking about, and I love that. And I listened to Meghan Markle today just give a speech about kind of what was going on, and she was talking about how we should always put helping others above our own fears. We all have social fears, meeting new people. It's always I'm always like, oh no, I'm nervous to meet someone new, but like just kind of getting out there and remembering like that's what should be like at the forefront of our minds. And I know that's easier like said than done, but when I look at those kids, I'm like, they put helping others, even with like something as simple as like homework, above like their own fear of just like oh, this is like a new after school program, and I think that's like the heart of God.
When I see a way to get rid of racism or how to help change the minds of racist behavior. I believe in knowing who you are, whatever culture that you are. When you're comfortable with yourself, you're comfortable with others. And so it's very important to learn how to love your skin, love who you are, and dig deep within yourself. So when you see another person, you don't have anything that you would want to take away from that person. You don't feel like you want to strip that person from who they are because you know who you are. And I think that's the first step of getting rid of or moving past certain things. And when we do that, then we can come together. Yeah, because it becomes coming together and learning each other's culture and respecting other people's way of doing things. Not making fun of it, not thinking that your way is better, or and that goes for both ways, because some people want to say, well, some white people are prejudiced, but you have prejudiced black people, you have prejudiced Asian people, we all have our own prejudice and biased behaviors within our own subcircles. And so when we're able to understand our own subcircles and why we feel this way, then we can, you got to look at yourself first. Then we can move past on loving each other and knowing how to be comfortable and how to be careful in what we say. If you have to think about if that was racist, then that was racist. If you have to feel like I shouldn't say the wrong thing, then there's some things in you that you have to figure out, well, why am I wrestling with this? Because even if I hurt someone's feeling, they shouldn't be able to charge it to my heart. I'm charging it to your head. Maybe it came out wrong. The same way you would have a bad conversation with a spouse. It just came out wrong, And so, to me, that's the first thing of breaking up some type of racist behavior is like learning who you are, knowing who you are, loving yourself, checking the people at your house, saying, hey, we're not thinking like that. We don't talk like that. And this is why. So why do you think like that? Or why do you talk like that? Why do you feel that way? Maybe someone hurt you. Okay, but that's a hurt. That has nothing to do with how you treat a whole group of people. And so, to me, that's the beginning.
And I like how, even though during this whole pandemic, in the way that we're doing church now, that has given us an opportunity as a family during the questions at the end for small groups to really be with one another and have a serious conversation about life, about our faith, and just to get to hear our children's heart and let them know where we're coming from and hear our heart. And I've been so thankful and giving God the glory because my children are very in tune. And they're very sensitive to the Spirit of God. And they have a good understanding of how the Spirit moves, how to identify what's right, what's wrong, and the dialogue of... And we have our niece who's been living with us now for close to 5 years. And she was an introvert when it came to having open conversations like that. She still struggles a little, but we don't have to pull teeth. Mm-hmm. All we just do is, okay, you have something to say? And it's just like, yeah, I have something to say, and this is what it is. And it's just like, I'm going to cry. But, yeah, like my wife was saying, just to piggyback off of what she's saying, having that knowledge and having those conversations, I think the talk and the education is the first key and step into really getting our minds around it and see how we're going to move forward as not only individuals, as a people, as a country, will be the way we can combat this thing.
What do you think Christ is saying to his church right now? In this moment, what do you think Christ is saying to his church?
I listened one of the pastors that I love recently, and then Gospel Mark chapter 1, and then how Jesus healed leprosy, and then in all of the Jewish people, whenever leprosies come, and then they they can stay holy as they are having distance from leprosy. So Jewish people, they can become holy. They become holy as much they have a distance from them. However, Jesus came to the leprosy, have a compassion toward him, and hug him. He didn't heal him, just having distance. I will heal you, and then go to see the priest. He didn't do that way. Jesus go to him, hug him and compassion, and then touch him and hug him, and I heal you. That's what Jesus did. I think that's the big difference between Christianity and other religion. We have to go. We have to mourn together. We have to go together. Even people say this is unholy. We cannot go there. We have to go. Because part of the gospel is by reaching out to the unholy, because we are holy, we make unholy become holy. That's the power of gospel. That's who we are. But Judaism, they keep making distance as we are having social distance, so that we can become holy. No, Christian, the power of gospel is not that. We have to go. We have to mourn together. We have to embrace them. We have to love them. We have to hug them and have compassion toward them. I think Christ challenged church. We have to go. We have to go and embrace and mourn together who are mourning. Who are hurting, we have to hurt together. We have to listen their heart, their broken heart. And then I think that's what we have to do. I don't know, that's what I think.
I feel like with all of this going on, you see so many people with so many different races and backgrounds coming together. Mm-hmm. And when Jesus says he's coming back for the church, that's the church he's coming back for. The unity, the church that's coming together. The church that says, even though there's a pandemic going on, I'm still going to lock arms with you because that's more important. And so he's not pleased with the behavior of why it's happening. But sometimes we can't think about why. We got to think about the now and what it's doing. Mm-hmm. We're digging up some dirt so we can mend. Mm-hmm. And we're not in our, Pastor T. Jakes had talked and said, someone said, well, we want to get to the healing. And he said, well, we can't get to the healing until we finish the operation. You don't want to put a Band-Aid over cancer. You want to dig it up. You want to, look into, we're operating. And so once we operate, Jesus is in the operation room. He's digging up those things with us. He's bringing the people. He's exposing some things that he's not pleased with. So then you see the people coming together and standing with one another. And that's what's pleasing to him. And once people come together and stand with one another, then we do the healing. And then he'll be the healer. So that's the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see, my interpretation is how he just went about to the masses, full confidence, and just speaking with people, being human. Even in Genesis, how he became flesh. That's what we have to do. We all have to become flesh, get back to the basics, and learn how to just open up our hearts and see the hearts of man and talk to them. Christ, he sat with people. He had meals with people. You know what I mean? He was a real dude for people. And wherever he went, it's just his presence. We have to be electrifying. The church has to be Christ in the streets and not just in the building. And once people see us out and about in the community and see the church, then they're like, oh, they know us now. Mm-hmm. It's not something where they see us drive go into the building, get in our cars and drive past and go home. And it's just like, oh, those church people. But I think we really just need to be Christ in the world, and just be the salt of the world.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I echo that. The first word that came to my mind was kind of just like the compassion and just being Christ in the world that you guys both mentioned. I don't know, I feel like I'm like, wow, you know, I don't know, I feel sometimes like I'm so lost, like, with everything going on, and I just feel like so overwhelmed with emotions that sometimes I'm like, well, what is God like really saying in all of this? And I've been asking myself that lately, so I've kind of been sitting here just like listening, and I'm like, you know, I really do feel like what everyone said, because I don't know, like, it's true if we kind of just go into the church and talk about it and we're like, all right, you know, we've like talked about it as a church, but we still need to go out and kind of go into those communities and like be there as a whole for those communities. And I think that's what God would want us to do.
What do you want to say to white Christian brothers and sisters?
I want to say that with the era that we're going through now, the things we're going through now, the message that's being put out in this very moment, because it's different things, regardless if it's not Black Lives Matter, it could be, you know, be fair to and be good to your Asian American, you know, neighbors. It can be good to your to your Jewish American brothers and sisters as well. But in this moment, because we're talking about Black lives matter. I've heard so many of my Caucasian friends would say, well, it's sort of the same as a KKK movement and those matters. And I'm like, you can't. Why are you comparing it to that? Because the only thing that we're saying is that we're not saying that we're better than you. We're just saying, look at us. We matter as well. We want the same things that you want. We deserve the same things you want. And we have to fight in a different way to get those things. So we have to stand on the corner with signs. We have to wear T-shirts. And when we say Black Lives Matter, it's to remind us that we know that we matter. I'm wearing this T-shirt because I matter. Because, you know, my grandmother matter. My aunt, my mom, they matter. My brother, it matters. And so I'm wearing it to make a statement, to let you know, hey, see me. See me, I'm here. We're here. And that's what the statement is about. And if a Caucasian individual would say, yeah, Black lives do matter. You know, not saying that white lives don't matter, not saying that Asian lives don't matter, but I'm okay to say Black lives matter. It doesn't say that my life doesn't matter if I say that Black lives doesn't matter. I'm acknowledging what you're fighting for, and that's what it is to me.
Yeah, kind of like saying, I see you. I see you. I see the struggle. It's been around for years, and whatever I can do to support you in it, just let me know. I had something else that I wanted to say in regard. Oh, yeah. As far as our Christian community with our white brothers and sisters, don't walk on the eggshells. Get the eggshell mentality out of your mind. Don't be afraid to approach. Don't be afraid to talk. Just be yourself. You don't have to try to relate right off the bat. If I see someone, or if I have a conversation with someone and they try to say something that I may be able to relate to or think that I like, and it's probably the furthest thing from me, I'm just like, I'm like, why would you, like, don't do that. Just, hi, my name is such and such or whatever. Like, just be yourself. Let's have a conversation. There's no need to, and don't be afraid to speak your heart and your mind, because that's what we're here for, to be able to speak our hearts and minds so we can better each other. So,
kind of to that too. I have a lot of friends who have been feeling like a lot of guilt, and I think just kind of like retreating into themselves as opposed to kind of just like talking to people and asking like, well, what are you feeling? Like, what does this mean? And I think, we should never forget, history. We should never forget what happened. But I also don't want, good people who are fighting for Black Lives Matter to kind of, like, I've seen my friends like, oh, I have so much guilt, like, I don't even want to go out, like, I don't know what to do in this situation, like, I just want to stay home. And I don't want people who also, who know God and who are fighting for like the same thing that we're fighting for to just like close off because they're not sure, what to do in this moment. And so I think this is, as you said, the time where we come together and we all talk with each other as a church, and we all, acknowledge what everyone's feelings and we stand by, a cause like together, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, standing by a cause together, finding something that we can own in your, like, that we say this is our cause. We're involved in this particular cause that's helping to change laws and change the way people do life.
Right.
Because you can protest and you can riot, but if we don't get things done within the system, then we're back here again.
First of all, I want to say thank you to all Immanuel. From my experience, to be honest, I think 98% that I met, all white, are good Christian. They are devoted. They love God. They take care of my family and my ministry. They support me. They did an awesome job. And I'm very, very grateful. God put me in under of Immanuel. And I'm so grateful what you have done, your leadership under, Immanuel, and then you have done great. But if I can choose one challenge to Immanuel or White, look around. As I'm Asian American pastor, I'm not always looking for a comfort zone. I feel comfort whenever I have a Korean friend. We can speak Korean, and we can eat Korean food. And then we can talk about Korean thing, and it is easy. However, I think God called us to go to some uncomfort zone, to see the beauty, the creation that I never experienced. And I was so amazed at how white Americans love Asian food.
That's really true.
As you love Asian food, why don't you try, like if you meet most, the people that you most meet, 98% are white American. If I were you, I try to meet other ethnicity. And I want you to invite other, Asian American, African American, invite them to listen what they are thinking, how different they are. And then different is not wrong. Different is a part of the beauty, I think. Diversity is a beautiful thing. So if you're parents, I think teach your kids by having lots of different people from different background, having them how beautiful God created us. And this is great opportunity to learn, to go to outside of box. So I try to see your all of the text, how many people you are texting only white. If much, and I try to make a friend, and then try to hang out with them, and then as I do, and I always do, try to learn different things from other ethnicity, which is fun, which is really, really fun. And then I really encourage you to experience more diversity in your life.
Sure. We're done, right? I mean, but I want to throw something out that's not necessarily a question, but just an observation, and then if you want to comment on it, and then after I do that, if there's anything else this has been kind of stirring the pot, right? If there's anything else that you just want to say that wasn't really covered under an umbrella of a question, then feel free to do that. But my observation is that we're living in an intensely politicized culture at this moment. And we're identifying ourselves as Republican or Democrat, or conservative or liberal. And that's even happening in the church. And we're taking this issue and we're politicizing it. But what I don't see the church doing is realizing that kingdom principles, the kingdom of God in which we're a part of, is way bigger than politics. And it's above politics. And I think that a lot of our own church people are really identifying themselves more with Democrat or Republican talking points than they are kingdom of God talking points. Does that make sense to you? Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that a lot of people forgetting about, if I vote for this particular thing, this will hurt my brother and sister this way. Because when you go home, like you were saying, you're then putting you and your family first. And that's when it gets, that's the hard part of breaking it away from being political within the church, because you're not everyday church people, and so you're not putting God first, which is the church. Because you come, sometimes we kind of go back, we leave the church, we love on one another while we're there, and we realize that we have differences while we're there. But when we go home, we don't recognize that we have differences, and my vote can hurt you, and your vote can hurt me. And so we're not thinking about, okay, maybe I shouldn't vote this way, or I shouldn't think this way, but this is comfortable for me and my family, and so I'll do that. I'll do what's comfortable for me and my family, and then I'll just go back to church on Sunday. But then someone feels the tension in between, because now you're uncomfortable, like I was saying, knowing who you are. So now you're uncomfortable, and then you're viewing yourself as a Democrat, or you're viewing yourself as a Republican, and not as a child of God, because you know that you've did something to hurt your brother or sister, and that gets in the way. That's the way I see, like, when we're viewing ourselves, when we go to church, as Republicans or Democrats, or liberals or non-liberals, because we know what we did when we weren't in church, and then we're carrying that back to the house of God, and it's staining us when we get there, and we can't love each other properly.
Anything that's not been specifically identified as a question, but something's churned in your spirit, and you just say, this is what's propelled me to think along this way.
Go ahead, Dana.
I mean, you can read my mind. No, I mean, I don't have like a specific thing. It was more just like, these past few days and weeks, like I've been wrestling a lot with, everything that's been happening. And I don't know, even coming into this conversation, I felt like, oh my gosh, like I don't really know like how to even describe like what I'm feeling and what's going on in the world. And, COVID hasn't obviously helped anything. But I think it was really, really nice to have a discussion, and I just felt really peaceful, and just like, I think this was really helpful. So I guess if anyone else is just, I don't know, I really just encourage people to just have like discussions like this, and we've mentioned that, but this was just really powerful, so thank you.
Praise God. Thank you.
Thanks for listening in on this important conversation today. I want to challenge you to consider some practical takeaways. Like, be a bridge builder. It's easy to stereotype a group of people when you don't really have a meaningful relationship with anyone in that people group. But when you get to know people of a different color, ethnicity, or culture, you realize how much you really have in common. So really see and listen to others, because relationship is the key to overcoming prejudice. Celebrate different, because different is good. God loves different. We ought to embrace and celebrate our differentness, because That's heaven. You know, Revelation chapter 7, verses 9 and 10 says, "Before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, and people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb." Now, that's what I love about Immanuel. You know, we have over 20 nations in our church represented every Sunday when we gather together and worship, and to me, that's just a little bit of heaven. Be a kingdom person as well. Check every thought, check every attitude against the kingdom of God. So, how did Jesus treat people different? How did Jesus love that person? And then lastly, learn more. You know, there's a great YouTube conversation between Stephen Furtick and John Gray that I think everybody should watch. I think you'll find it very, very meaningful and you'll enjoy it, and it'll open up your eyes. Again, thanks for joining us today.